Hello, good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of Daily Record Hotline Live. Sorry we're late. You won't believe this, actually, but we have got genuinely a Swedish producer who goes by the name of Henrik. And Henrik at the last minute was just having to do some odds and ends. So Henrik apologises for us being late, Scotty.
I thought you were going to blame me there.
That's legit though, isn't it? Well, you are almost to blame for turning up here about 2 minutes before we meant to go on in. But anyway, you're here. We've got loads to discuss, Scott.
We should be doing it live for Loch Lomond anyway, surely, no?
Possibly, aye. You get the wee budgie smugglers on going for a dip, aye.
You don't want to see that.
No, we don't. Listen, I'm sure that'll come up as part of our discussions tonight, Scott, because we've not heard your take on everything that's been going on at Rangers over the last few sort of traumatic days. Very interested to get that. Quite a bit going on. I think our colleague Scott Burns has just dropped a story online. It's an interesting one that Hibs have been actively engaged in talks with Stephen Fletcher, trying to tempt him into one last year back at where it all started for him, and possibly, acting as a sort of mentor to Kieran Bowie, which I could think of a lot of worse things and a lot of worse players for him to learn of. What's your take on that? That's an interesting development.
Certainly is. I thought Stephen Fletcher might have just kind of stepped away for the game after leaving Wrexham, if I'm being honest. I mean, listen, he had a good time there, obviously helping them get back to the Championship, but he was obviously, he's 38 now, I think he was used kind of sparingly. I think he was used as
Still scored a lot of goals.
He did mostly as like an impact sub, it has to be said, but he was still a threat. I mean, honestly, when you watch the Wrexham highlights of the goals that he scored, he was coming on late. He was really taking advantage of teams being tired. A lot of headers at the back post, late goals for Wrexham, which were crucial in getting them up. So he's certainly still had a part to play. But I think when you knew he was leaving there, and obviously the summer's passed, he's no sign for a club. I just thought maybe that'll be him, and what a career he's had. But to come back to Scotland with Hibs, especially given where kind of Hibs are at the moment, a really good place, as you say, with Bowie up front, it'd be some move for him.
Yeah, I think he's probably got a lot to consider personally and all that, but certainly it's interesting that even the talks are taking place.
Yeah.
We've got some comments coming in already. Boyd Craig said, "Hurry up." I think that was that's Henrik's fault. Sorry, Boyd. Listen, just before, because I caught up earlier with Ryan McDonald, who was over at Celtic Park for the unveiling of new boy Seb Tounetki. And we can play that in a little bit, Scott, because that's obviously, I think the Celtic fans are going to be quite excited with this guy. From what I saw him at the weekend, we don't have much to base it on. There's not a lot of evidence there, but just on his debut at Rugby Park, I think he looks as if he's going to be a player that excites the Celtic supporters. So we'll do that in a wee second. Just one more news line that I just want to mention, Scott, and get your take on it before we hear from Ryan. I understand that phone calls are being made, back channeling is going on, and the Rangers regime are currently speaking to sounding out potential alternatives should they decide that they can no longer back Russell Martin. It sounds to me very much as if they're looking to put something in place if, in a worst case scenario for them, they're bumped into taking action this weekend when Rangers play Hibs in the quarterfinals of the League Cup. I suppose they've got to be doing this. It shouldn't come as any major surprise, but at the same time, it really underlines the sort of perilous nature of Russell Martin's position right now.
Aye, of course it does. But I mean, after Saturday, if you'd have been in that press conference room on Saturday after the Hearts game, like me, you'd probably be amazed that Russell Martin's still in post.
Well, I don't think I need to be in the room to come to that conclusion.
But that doesn't surprise me. And see, to be honest, Jacko, I mean, Kevin Thelwell wouldn't be doing his job properly if he's not got an idea of who the next...
Well, that wouldn't come as any great surprise.
Well, look, that's the role. I mean, if you're going to have a sporting director, a massive part of that job is knowing, even when you've got a manager who's in and is doing well and is successful, it's your job to see round corners and know who the next manager's going to be. So he should have been doing that anyway. No, but especially the way the season started, that doesn't. It
actually does seem quite late in the day to start sounding people. But that's really no surprise. Anyway, business that has been done, as I said to you, I caught up with Ryan McDonald earlier, and it was a shame, Scott, because it was a very, very blowy kind of background or backdrop outside Celtic Park, where Ryan first attempted to do his little piece with us. He ended up having to move into the car. And it's quite a busy car park at this time of year sometimes. So listen, here's Daniel. As I said, he just caught up with Celtic's new signing, Seb Tounetki.
Ryan, you join us from outside Celtic Park. You were standing perfectly positioned at the front door with a lovely backdrop of the stadium, but it's blown a gale and I couldn't hear a word you were saying. So you join us from the car park, which can be a busy place at this time of year.
Well, I just about kept my hair on as well. I was getting blown away there, so I'm happy to be in the car park instead.
All calm today, though, and you were down there to speak to Celtic's new signing, Seb Tounetki.
Yep, Seb Tounetki, yep.
Look, I have to tell you, from watching the game of the weekend, I thought he was the real bright spark for Celtic. I thought he was really exciting in everything he did. And I think if he can maintain that level of performance, Celtic fans are going to enjoy this guy.
Yeah, it was a really eye-catching debut, and it makes you wonder what could have happened if he arrived two weeks earlier. But obviously that's been and gone now. You need to look to the future, and he certainly looks a real talent, an exciting talent, a type of player that Celtic fans will quickly fall in love with. You know, Celtic fans have become accustomed to watching players like Jota and Nicholas Kuhn and wingers of that ilk down the years. Players that can really get fans off seats, and he looks to be another one of them. He was outstanding at Rugby Park. I felt the first half he was good, but the second half really came into it before he perhaps tired to it a wee bit towards the end. But he wasn't scared to take players on. He was skillful. He had both feet, and he kind of terrorised the Kamal defence. He was unlucky not to get an assist as well. So it was a brilliant start for him, especially on a tricky surface and a tricky venue as well, like Rugby Park. It's never easy to go there at the best of times, but he dealt with it extremely well, and he was man of the match. So you can't really ask for more than that.
No, do you know what I liked? What caught the eye for me was his close control, but also, as you were saying, as soon as he got the ball at his feet, he was wondering how to get past him, how to hurt people. He wasn't taking the easy option, and that gives you enough confidence, even though it's only 90 minutes, to think this guy's going to be a bit of a handful. And I think you're right along the lines of, Celtic have been crying out for a winger the same sort of quality as a Jota or a Kuhn. The early indications are they might have found something in this boy. What was his sort of takeaway on it? What was his headlines from the press today?
Well, first of all, just speaking to him, I think he was just over the moon to be at Celtic and to be in Glasgow. He's a really nice guy, introduced himself to all the written press. And yeah, he couldn't really wipe the smile off his face. He was absolutely delighted to be here. He made it clear. I think this is Celtic's now his seventh club of his career. He's only 23. So he's made it clear that he wants to kind of settle down in Glasgow, and he thinks that Celtic's finally found a home at Celtic. So obviously he was in Sweden with Hammarby for a while. Yeah, he was obviously in Sweden with Hammarby for 6 months just there, but so it's been a kind of whirlwind 6-7 months for him. But he's wanting to make a real go of it at Celtic and at least stay here for a couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, especially if there's interest that comes his way next summer or later on. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, he's absolutely delighted to be here. He's a Tunisian international as well, so he's got his eyes set on the World Cup next year. He was actually born in Norway, and he came through the Norway. I think he was capped up until under 19s level with Norway, and then he switched international allegiances to Tunisia 2-3 years ago, and he's earned 2 caps for them. So he came off the bench in the recent international break just there and helped Tunisia qualify for World Cup. So yeah, he'll be determined to book his ticket in the plane to North America next year, and obviously sees Celtic as a key part in that, and a platform that will be helping to do that. So Yeah, he's an ambitious young lad, obviously a talented young lad, and yeah, he was in good form at Espresso.
Yeah, I mean that is they have got the advantage of already being qualified for the tournament. We've only just started out in our campaign, but they're there already. So there is a lot, on the schedule for this boy, and he will be determined to make the most of this opportunity. Did he talk, or was he asked, Ryan, about, because it seemed to go on for a long time, like so many of Celtic's potential deals over the summer did, which has caused the situation that the club's now in with the supporters. Did he mention, the long wait and the fact that it went actually right down to the 11th hour and deadline day before the deal was completed?
Yeah, he was reluctant to go too deeply into it, but he did say that as soon as he heard of Celtic's interest, that was the place he wanted to go. As I said at the start, Keith, he'd obviously only been at Hammarby for 6 months, so I don't think he was quite necessarily in a rush to leave the club. But obviously, the opportunity to join Celtic, under a manager like Brendan Rodgers, playing Europa League, playing in front of 60,000 fans, obviously it's an opportunity he wanted to take. And Hammarby obviously were reluctant to lose him, but Celtic obviously forced their hand at the 11th hour with tabling and agreeing, I think it was a fee of around £5.5 million for his services. So I think it only cost Hammarby about £1 million in February. So it was a good deal for all parties, and in the end he was delighted to be here. But I think he was aware of Celtic's interest for some time.
Yeah, frustrating a little bit, I think, if you're Brendan Rodgers, given what's just happened with the Champions League qualifiers and all this. And in terms of the wider picture around Celtic, Ryan, give us your take, because the win at the weekend will have helped, I think, just to douse things down in the short term. But I don't. The supporters are on his side. They're anti-board. They're protesting against the board, and it does feel as if Brendan Rodgers is at loggerheads now with Peter Lawwell, which is an incredible set of circumstances given the success rate the club's had over the years. I find it hard to understand. What's your reading on the situation and how it's likely to move forward from here?
Well, I think in terms of Brendan Rodgers, I think he mentioned it at the weekend, his focus and his priority now is the transfer window's done and dusted. Obviously, it didn't go to plan for Celtic, but he can only work with what he's got now until January at least, and hope that there's constructive talks internally and Celtic finally learn their lesson when it comes to getting players in a timely manner. So obviously he's aired his frustrations on Friday. He said what he had to say, and I think in terms of Brendan Rodgers and this current squad and his kind of feelings towards the board, I think he's drawn a line under that for now. On the other hand, though, is you've got the Celtic fans who are not drawing a line under it, and I don't think they won't until there's change, until they force some change. Obviously, they came in at the 12th minute at Rugby Park. There was maybe, I don't know, a third of the fans were inside the stadium, were in their seats for kick-off, which is fine, and then maybe 2/3, maybe, I don't know, between 2,000 and 3,000 fans made their way up in the 12th minute. So that's quite a large proportion, and they made their point. And I think that's just going to be the first of many protests. I don't see this one going away. I think there's so many kind of fan groups now that are wanting action. And I think the Celtic board, they've still got answers. I mean, I think the Celtic Trust and the Ultras groups and the fan collectives, they put out a statement at the start of September with 7 questions on it. Obviously, Celtic put out that car crash of a statement late in the Saturday night, and it answered none of the questions. So I think really there's still got to be accountability. I think the Celtic fans want to see change in the boardroom, and by change I think that means personnel. I think they see the current custodians, they believe they've had too many chances. They've had to right the wrongs of previous windows. And I think, the fans with, 5% increase in season tickets, the increased match ticket prices, the endless amount of merchandise that's coming out. I think it looks like, from what I'm reading into it, is they're going to start kind of hitting Celtic in the pocket, which is not what you want to see at any club. But it seems to me that unless there's change, that's the inevitable route it's going to go down. It'll be interesting to see how many fans purchase Europa League packages. I think they're due on Thursday. The first payment for that's due on Thursday. So, I think a lot of season ticket holders are refusing to buy them. There's a home cup ticket scheme which many people are members of. They've cancelled that direct debit, which means they won't be paying for the tickets. But that, on the other side of that, it gives fans that might not get to go to the games that maybe aren't fortunate enough to have season tickets, it gives them the chance to go to the games. So I think the first Europa League attendance will be extremely interesting. And I think that's in October the 3rd. I think it's Braga who's the visitors of Celtic Park that day. So it'll be interesting to see. But I don't. The crux of the matter is I don't think the noise is going to go away from the Celtic fans.
So a little distracted by some messages coming in there. It is crazy. It's mental, isn't it, that you've got this situation right now where on both sides of the city, people are ready to start burning the houses down. Celtic in a really strong position at the top of the league. Celtic fans will argue they're always in a really strong position at the top of the league. Makes no difference. They're not happy with the board. The other side of the city, you've got a support and full-scale revolt now against the manager. Whatever way you turn, there's somebody running about with their hair on fire.
That's why we love it, isn't it? That's why we're here. No, you're right, it's strange. I mean, the Rangers thing kind of speaks for itself after the start they've made to the season. Celtic's situation's a bit different. Just they've actually started the domestic campaign reasonably well. We know they've got a strong squad anyway, of course. But
it's weaker.
Aye,
and the fans are right to be angry about that.
Rodgers and the fans wanted it to be a lot stronger, especially going into a European campaign. Listen, we've been over this. It should have been done before the Champions League qualifiers. Guys like Tounetki could have been in the door. Brendan Rodgers.
Well, that's inexplicable.
Aye, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Clearly a guy they wanted. Clearly a guy Brendan Rodgers wanted. Hammarby obviously had a price and were willing to hold out. Because as Ryan says, there were no rush to sell. The player probably wasn't in any rush to move.
But do you know, Scott, the thing that I think frustrates the Celtic fans? You're right, Hammarby did have a price, and it was only $5.5 million. Was $5.5 million to Celtic? That's money down the back of the couch in the boardroom. Right. That shouldn't be a roadblock to Celtic getting deals done. That deal should have been done. It should have been done weeks before it was.
Aye,
and by the way, you might have avoided this whole scenario.
And why would you risk haggling
for $1 million?
For $1 million before a massive Champions League game? Nobody's saying here that you pay over the top. No, you need to get value for money. You don't just go and spend willy-nilly. But the situation Celtic were in ahead of those Champions League qualifiers, if there's a player there who's clearly been identified by the manager,
with the amounts at stake, if you're successful in qualifying for it,
and by the way, especially in that position, given Celtic's situation there with Jota injured, Cunliffe, and getting into those games, Brendan Rodgers knew, and it showed up in the games against
Armati.
Armati. They needed game changers. They needed difference makers in the final third. That's where they couldn't score. Now, listen, it's early days for Tounetki, but he showed enough at the weekend to suggest
he could have made a difference.
He might have made a difference.
Yeah. As Maestro 95 says, 100% and the money lost. This is the one that's because these are smart guys that are in charge of Celtic, and that's why I'm struggling with it so much. I can't understand why they've allowed this one to sort of creep up on them and blindside them. It was obvious what needed to be done. They didn't do it. They've now got an angry support and an angry manager, and it doesn't feel like a good platform to launch the season on.
Do you not think, Jacko, that they've probably underestimated the feeling amongst the support?
No, I don't, because they've been there long enough. They should know. And it's always simmering just beneath the surface.
They should know, and they shouldn't underestimate the strength of feeling. But I think they have. I think they've got away with it in previous seasons. We've spoken here about how, during the transfer window, building up to the Champions League qualifiers, we weren't really surprised at Celtic's lack of activity because we'd been in this movie before with them. But I think they've got away with it. They've somehow, naively thought they were going to get away with it again this time. both on the pitch and off it probably, and both of those have backfired on them. They get thrown out of the Champions League. But I seriously think they've underestimated the strength of feeling for the Celtic fans. And don't get me wrong,
I'm not sure they've underestimated it. I think they've just ignored it.
But, so you think they knew there would be this level of backlash?
I think the people in there knew that if they didn't spend significant sums, given the amount that's sitting in the bank account, there would be a price to pay. And for whatever reason, whether or not deals fell over late on, that they thought, but they took an unnecessary risk. They had the money there. They should have spent it. They should have bolstered the squad. They should have, at the very least, replaced the guys that they lost since Kyogo left. It just seemed, it was almost as if they were poking the bear with a stick.
You're right, but I don't think they'd expected this level of anger, and I don't think they'd expected this kind of collective kind of mobilisation, if you like, of all these Celtic groups. And like that statement that they put out on the Saturday night, the 1,000-word statement, I think that showed it was almost like panic. Again, a ridiculous statement they put
Statement
out,
was awful.
Underestimating again how the fans.
That was just not reading
would
the room.
react
That
to it.
was
Exactly.
that one was staggering. One of the comments there. Let me put my specs on. Robbo says, nice of Andy Newport to release a statement on behalf of the Union Bears. Did you have any part in it?
That might not be far from the truth.
I'm bringing that up, Scott, because at a time when you've got the Celtic fans, Green Brigade, various other groups, calling for change, demanding change, heads must roll in the boardroom and all this, you've also got the same going on across the city, where you've now got, you've actually got fan groups falling over one another in the rush to put statements out demanding this head, that head, the next head. Where are you with this? Because we've not had the chance to speak since before Rangers managed to make their problems even more difficult with the 2-0 defeat at home at Hearts. And you were there for that. So talk to me about the mood. Talk to me about what you think happens and how Rangers get out of this.
Oh, look, in terms of the mood, it's as bad as I can remember it. I mean, listen, that game on Saturday, I don't think I've ever heard that level of abuse, that kind of real poisonous abuse towards any Rangers manager in my lifetime. And it
was directed almost 100% at him. It wasn't so much the players. Is that right, or is that not true?
100%. I mean, listen, there was the usual kind of jeer, kind of groans for the crowd with a misplaced pass, or obviously when the two Hearts goals went in. But no, it was directed specifically at Martin. I mean, when the players came out at half time, they were cheered onto the pitch, but then Martin obviously comes out after them in the dugout, and there's this kind of chorus of boos. I mean, it was so pointed, honestly, so loud. You're thinking, poor Rangers mans like Kashinya, for instance, he never get anywhere near that level of abuse. I don't think, if my memory serves me right, this is like, it's as vociferous as I can ever remember it towards one guy. And on a personal level, obviously, you kind of feel for Russell Martin in that sense, but after the game...
He's not helped himself.
No, he's not.
I thought he was dead prickly in the press conference after the game when he needed to be shown a bit of contrition and, trying to explain his part and take responsibility. And I read you wrote a column today I read, it was very good, calling for people in that football club to start taking a bit of accountability.
100%.
Russell Martin washed his hands of it, blamed it all on the players, their mentality, their scare. I mean, I couldn't believe he used the word scared.
I know. He just had to come out and say on Saturday, look, results are unacceptable, and it's on me. That's what he had to say. I think Andy did a piece in the paper the day with Greg Stewart talking about how Steven Gerrard would always come out after a bad performance and say, look, this is on me. It's not the players. This is all on.
But
all
then
on me.
kind of was the players. He'd leave a wee caveat, but he just didn't. Really.
But Gerrard wasn't scared to kind of speak up and take it on his shoulders, and I think that's what Martin's been lacking a wee bit. But as I've said in that piece, it's not just Russell Martin. I think in terms of accountability, there's several kind of people, within that club. Patrick Stewart, arguably being the main one who
has
to speak up.
Want to speak to you about that because I read your piece again. Look, we may be coming at this from different. Maybe we've got our wires crossed. My understanding, Scott, throughout the recruitment process, which ended with the appointment of Russell Martin, was that Greta Steinson and Kevin Thelwell were entirely responsible for it, and that Patrick Stewart was pretty much cut out the decision-making look. In fact, and I think I've said previously, if push came to shove, I'm not sure that would have been his choice. Anyway, I think he preferred one of the other candidates in the process. At least one of the other candidates.
But even if that's the case, he's still the CEO. He's still signing off on that appointment.
But
you know what I mean?
I do believe that what the process, the whole process, and this is part of the blue sky thinking, the how to run a football club. You've got a chief executive, and he delegates. The chief executive delegates the decision of how the football department runs
to the sporting director.
To the sporting director. The chief executive, his umbrella is more about the company, the finances. He's got to supply the money for the sporting director to then go out and finance if it's that manager, that player. That was my understanding of the process. Do you think I'm wrong? Because I've noticed a lot of fans out there saying the exact same thing, that Patrick Stewart has to take responsibility. But if he wasn't involved in the process on a deliberate basis, how can he be the fall guy for it?
Because he's still the CEO of the company. He's running the club on a day-to-day basis. Now, I think Patrick Stewart maybe for what you're saying, I think Patrick Stewart maybe had a wee bit more to do with it, but I accept your point that Steinson and Thelwell would have been in charge of that kind of recruitment process. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't take anything away from the fact that we're 5 games in, the club hasn't won a league game yet, they're 10th in the league. The 13 players that they've brought in, very few of them are looking capable. Patrick Stewart's the guy that's running the club day to day. As I've said in the piece, he's the guy that's basically asking punters to forget what they're watching at the moment, but go and pay nearly 200 quid for a Europa League package. So he has to come out and explain, whether it was his appointment or no, he has to come out and explain to fans what's happening. What he said at the Russell Martin unveiling when I was there, that Martin was the outstanding candidate.
He did.
Right, when others were mentioned, obviously, your Ancelottis and people like that. So he has to come out and say why he was the outstanding candidate and give his views on why it hasn't happened so far, why there's no signs of progress at all under Russell Martin, and if the board are continuing to back him, explain to fans why Patrick Stewart thinks he's going to turn it around.
I think there's a couple of things there, Scott. We talk about. I've mentioned on no conceivable basis for me did Russell Martin have a CV which merited getting himself into the later stage of a process to become the Rangers manager. So, but Rangers managed to botch that whole process so badly that they were left with one guy with a bad CV and another guy with no CV. That was it. So, and I accept, if you're the chief executive, you've maybe got to step in at that point, even if you think you're being excluded 100%. From it. I think you've got to step into it. And also, where I do think that Patrick Stewart has to be accountable is, his signature's on the decision to employ Kevin Thelwell. And that looks like an unmitigated disaster right now. I don't think that Kevin Thelwell, I'm struggling to think of a decision that he's got right thus far. Well, and I think he becomes a problem.
Again, I've said Thelwell, I know Kevin Thelwell did an interview at the end of the transfer window.
But he was kind of pushed into.
Aye, and it was pretty generic about the kind of strategy in terms of the signings, but he's got to come out and explain certain things. No, and it might seem small things, but again, I've said in the piece, they spend £3 million on a centre-back from Peterborough. Yeah. Doesn't even make the bench on Saturday, which seems crazy. I mean, again, we don't know the kind of background, if there's reasons for that, but again, the supporters deserve to know. Russell Martin, you said it, Russell Martin comes out on Saturday and says the players are scared. I think you said in your piece the other day, I mean, what does that say about the mentality and the character and the personality of the players that are signing?
And more importantly, the due diligence of the people in charge of making those signings and offering those contracts. I don't think there's been any due diligence done here. And Russell Martin's saying, these guys are scared to go onto the football pitch. Well, what are you doing signing them?
Right, but we're constantly told now, in this kind of modern football world, the sporting directors and recruitment gurus, and apparently no stones left unturned when they sign a player. They speak to people that's worked with them, they speak with teammates, coaches. They get in behind the individual, the character, the personality. That's the whole point of this process. You sign players, and I've said to you before, my fear with Kevin Thelwell coming in as sporting director was, and it's not a criticism of him, but there's no way he really knows what it takes to be a Rangers player because he's no experience of Rangers, no experience of Scottish football, what the demands are.
So, as I've said before, if you don't know what it is you're looking for in a player, how can you possibly hope to find it?
How can you get it?
Just get lucky.
And look, listen, there's 13 new players there. I think there are a few really good ones in there. No, they might not have showed it yet. I think a few of them probably will be successful. I am worried watching that game on Saturday that the longer this goes on, I actually worry that some of these players are going to become almost scarred by this. Aye. That would be a worry for me.
Well, the good news is, Scott, that everyone's fine because Russell Martin took them for a wee picnic at Loch Lomond on Monday just to ease the anxiety levels. What did you make of that?
About the swimming?
About the whole thing. Now, I'm going to, I'll level with you before we start. I actually think, look, Russell Martin has just wandered into this zone where it doesn't matter what he does. And if results were great and all that, people would probably say this is a great thing and this is smart management. It's a bin fire and he's taking them wild water swimming. And
I'm glad
he's getting lampooned for it. He's getting lampooned for it.
I swim like a brick, so I'm glad I'm not in that squad. I would never been up for that at all. Look, you say that he can't do.
There's nothing he can do in it.
But what I would say is, to me, Jacko, it's desperation, isn't it? I mean, it's a guy trying anything.
Yeah.
Which, no, on the face of it, might not be a bad thing. On the face of it, you say, well, you can admire him. He's trying different things. He's clutching at things. He's just desperate for a result to go their way. But we're 5 games into the season.
Yeah.
5 games in.
It does feel a bit David Brent, doesn't it?
He's in a pre-season with him. I said at the game on Saturday, I maybe naively turned up on Saturday and I genuinely thought, right, he's had 2 weeks training with him. He's had international break. They've hit the reset button, as he said. The window was closed, which he was desperate for at the time. I'm thinking in my head, he's going to have got them all together in that international break. He's proper time to work with him on the training pitch.
Which he'd moaned about not having.
Right,
yeah.
I'm thinking, this is it. This is the day Russell Martin's Rangers turn up. He actually said at his press conference on Friday, he actually quoted saying, our season starts here.
Yeah.
See that first 20 minutes? I'm watching it thinking, there's just nothing here. Absolutely nothing. I mean, it was like the start of almost every other game so far this season. It was as if they hadn't worked on anything. No patterns of play, no passing movements, no attacking intent, no flimsy defensively again.
They either don't understand what they're being asked to do or they just don't trust it and they don't trust the instructions.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. But there's something else that I really need to, because this is where you get the investigative head on, Scott. Now, on this day trip to Loch Lomond, right, wee bit of detective work. I'm going to show you something here. Who's responsible for that? Carry on. What is that?
I did notice they're crackers, aren't they?
Do you know, for a horrible moment, I thought it might have been Russell Martin. And I'm looking about, and everybody else has just got their trainers on to walk up the hill, whatever. I think Jack Butland is the man responsible for these.
You wouldn't get away with walking about Castlemilk with them on, would you? Not a chance.
Well, somebody would have them off you. They're at 429 quid, I think.
Exactly.
Did my research. Dewberry of Ireland, apparently they're in the, very, very well thought of in the country folk. They're actually called Wexford Men's Country Boot Walnut.
I think Jack Button might have been wearing them while he was playing last season.
On his hands. But see things like this, and this is where, and you know, Rangers, I think, were happy. The American owners come in. There had been the kind of accusation, banter years, but when Russell Martin takes them to Loch Lomond, when they're sitting 10th in the table, when there's actually, if results go against them, they could be sitting at the bottom of the table, and you know, people are looking at it, and you know, I saw somebody saying, yeah, I can imagine Russell Martin at the press conference before the Hibs game. So yeah, 4 or 5 of the guys are out with Lyme's disease after the Loch Lomond thing. But
pneumonia.
But the good news is Kieran Dill's fit and he's been looking great in training.
Nah, the optics aren't great.
No,
the optics aren't great.
I don't know what the hot yoga class was like.
I says to Gavin Berry on we're doing the Rangers podcast, Record Rangers podcast today. I mean, the thing is about these team bonding sessions, if that's what you want to call it, to me it's normally when it's a successful team, it's a team that's been doing well, but then they're maybe having a wee blip, towards the kind of latter end of the season.
And just
they need
regroup a little bit.
Yeah, they need a bit of togetherness, a wee reminder, what's got them there in the first place. I actually said, I mean, we were laughing, kind of half joking about Richard Goff's famous comment about a team that drinks together, wins together. And I know football's changed, we're in a totally different era now, but to me, that's probably what this squad needed more. It was probably a right good night out, and this was the chance. This was probably the week they had to do it. And I know people might turn their kind of noses up at that because of the way football is now. But I remember I said to Gav, I remember Scott Arfield saying last season with Falkirk, they'd been this terrific run going for promotion, and then the wheels came off a bit, kind of 3/4 of the way through. And I think one of Arfield's teammates, Carl Donaldson, told the story this week. They lost a game. It was maybe a Friday night game. They lost the game, put them under real pressure. People starting to question whether they were actually going to go up. And Arfield just walked into the dressing room after it and says, right, that's it. Everybody tomorrow, we're out. It's an all-day session, basically. And they went out. They kind of aired any grievances they had. They had a right good kick at the ball. And they came back in training Sunday or Monday. And sure enough, they kind of kicked on again. Things like that can work. No, when the circumstances are right. I don't think the circumstances were right.
Well, I don't know how much morale you're going to lift by forcing people to into freezing Loch Lomond at this time of year. I don't know. It doesn't make...
It was comical though. Some of the pictures, there was a few pictures kind of popped up on social media, obviously. I mean, you're just trying to picture, there was one in particular, a guy, Rangers fan, obviously with his family, and they're going up Conic Hill, and I think he posted basically saying, you go for a walk. You don't expect to see the full Rangers squad walking towards you. I mean, it must have been absolutely bizarre.
Got to say that, but was that guy not wearing his Rangers shirt at the time as well? Right.
Raskin was there though.
He made the squad for the trip. Yep. That was
which I thought
a step forward.
I thought that was interesting because I don't know what you think. I've got a feeling Raskin might be involved again this weekend. I think it's almost like a kind of week's punishment, if you like, after the international break. But given obviously the result on Saturday, and as long as as he's gave 100%, which I'm sure he has this week, he's obviously been part of that group. All joking aside, that have went out. I think he'll be in the squad for the weekend and might be involved against Hibs.
Well, it'll be fascinating. Look, before we go, there is another club and another manager. Scottish football, maybe it all comes in threes, I don't know. But there seems to me, Scott, to be a bit of a crisis brewing up the road at Pittodrie. I think Jimmy Tounekti's record is absolutely abysmal now.
Yep.
If you take aside two things: one, brilliant start to last season, and two, a brilliant end to last season with the Scottish Cup. But the bit in the middle and the bit that's come after it has been almost catastrophic. How much longer do you think he's got? And there has been movement at Pittodrie today, up the stairs a little bit. Yeah. It feels like a club which is starting to feel the pressure as well.
I think the big question is, Keith, how much credit has he got in the bank with it? How much credit does a Scottish Cup win buy you? And it does buy you quite a lot, because these victories are so rare. But I agree with you. I mean, he has to be in thin ice now, Jimmy Tounekti, because the record is so bad, and it's the lack of goals, which is a massive thing. You look at the crowds they're getting up there, especially after the cup final win. There was so much expectation there at the start of this season.
A lot of goodwill, momentum coming out of Hampden.
Big crowds. They've signed a lot of players, spent a lot of money.
Scott, they've got a really deep, talented group of players, squad wise.
I agree.
I think they've done exceptionally well with some of the guys that they've brought in the latest window. So see, when you're looking at that, when you've got a talented group of players, you've brought in some real quality, Stardust to add to it, and you're still not getting the results. That points to there's another factor here. And I think Jimmy Tounekti is probably going through something very similar with his group of players to what Russell Martin is experiencing at Rangers right now.
And this is, I don't know if you'll agree, Jacob, this is where Jimmy Tilleen is who he is, but it's probably at times like this you need a wee bit more from him, a wee bit more character, a wee bit more personality. His interviews aren't great,
He's
press
dry,
conferences
yeah.
aren't great, very dry, and it's at times like these when the fans kind of need something to cling on to, and they're not getting that. They're not seeing it on the pitch, and then they're not seeing it for him pre and post match. So it's a worrying time for them. But I agree with you. I think the squad they've got there, I mean, they should be doing so much better. Honestly, think of the middle to front, especially with the players they've got, and obviously Carlson coming in for Bologna, which was an eye-catching
Incredible
signing.
bit of business.
Aye, and I only seen the highlights at the weekend, but he looked to have a decent start to his kind of Aberdeen career. Looks like a dangerous player, but the lack of goals is incredible.
Scott, listen, we'll leave it there for tonight. We're back again tomorrow. Rebel, thanks very much. Just says great show again, guys. Put a thumbs up on the website, whatever that means. What's the thumbs? Give us your thumbs, folks.
No idea.
Scott, listen, thanks for coming into the studio. Everybody back there, thank you so much once again for all your comments. Sorry I can't get through them all, but we'll try again tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, for the next edition of Hotline Live, and who knows what will happen in the next 24 hours.